So normally my colleague Frederick would be here because it's mostly based on his work he had done in his bachelor thesis, but unfortunately he couldn't make it, so I will take over it. So I'm Mario, I'm a researcher at the University of Münster at the Institute for Geoinformatics, but my original background is from education. So originally I would be into school now and be a teacher for chemistry and geography, but somehow my way led me to computer science, geoinformatics, and yeah, now I'm doing it all the time, and I'm pretty happy about to connect these two worlds together. And our idea or prototype was like connecting a citizen science platform with openBatches to motivate users to gain their attention, to take part, but also to keep them motivated doing the work. I think for most of you, citizen science is a term you know are familiar with. So it's basically like engaging citizens into scientific projects. It can be in a different scale, like monitoring species and sending them to service, setting up sensor stations, but also like folding proteins and classifying galaxies. So there's a huge range of different projects, and in our project, or in our platform more or less, the openSenseMap, is like a service for other citizen science projects. So we don't run an active citizen science project, but we are kindly offering a service for other citizen scientists and other citizen science projects to just use the platform as a service for storing data, like analyzing data, and the whole infrastructure is kind of open. So you are not stick to a specific hardware, you are not stick to a specific term of or type of sensor. You can do whatever you want to upload to this platform. It can be either stationary sensor data, but it can also be mobile sensor data. And the whole infrastructure is free to use, and there are, of course, some limitations, like you are only allowed to upload 6 measurements per minute to keep the API alive and not to stress it too much. In the current state, there are around about 12K of devices registered all around the world. So there is a strong focus in Central Europe, like we were funded from the German ministry. Of course, there is a lot of marketing and so on going on in Germany, so there are more sensor stations in Germany, but there are also local communities in Poland, in the Netherlands, using this kind of platform for their specific citizen science project and uploading sensor data. So if you go to the map, to the openSenseMap, you can explore all the different sensor stations and see the data directly. So like these 2 sensor stations are right here in Kosovo. So we don't really know who is setting up this sensor station. Of course, we could look it up in the database, but there seems to be, I think it's an institute or something, using this platform to capture sensor data, and they are now measuring like PM2, PM10, like fine particulate matter or dust, temperature, humidity, and also air pressure. And of course, you have this like basic interaction features, like you can view data directly on the platform for the last 24 hours, for the last week, last month, get simple grasp just to interact with your data or with all other data. And if you now want to access the data for scientific research, there are different possibilities to access the data. Of course, you can just go to the front end and download a CSV file or whatever you want to download, but you can also directly access the data via the API. There's a huge archive, so we have all the data beginning of 2014 in the archive, and there are direct libraries for R and Python so that you can directly interact with the data and use it in your application or your scientific research. And there are currently like around about 30 to 40 scientific publications using openSenseMap data, which we are not directly related, so they just use this kind of platform for data management, for storing data, and to interact with the data. In terms of devices, I just said there are around about 12K of devices currently on the platform. There are around about 11 billions of measurements, mostly temperature, humidity, fine particulate matter, and air pressure. This comes if you look to the devices which are registered. So there's a huge citizen science project called Sensors.Community. It used to be Luftdateninfo, a German project funded in Stuttgart but they got more and more international, so they also changed the name to be international. And most of these devices are around about 30 euros. You can just build it yourself, hook it up to the platform and collect data. Then we also have some kind of data set or some kind of hardware setup, which is the SenseBox. There are different versions with different kind of sensors you can set up together. Another project was the Hack Air, so it used to be a citizen science project, mostly in Belgium and the Netherlands, but then the funding runs out, so all the data was kind of lost, and they put all the data to our platform, and the devices are still alive. And you can hook up your device, so you don't have to stick to any kind of device which is out there. You can build it yourself, you can hook up any sensor you want. At least you need to be able to send the data to the internet, but with most devices it's possible. For the SenseBox, it looks like you often, or for all devices, it's quite similar. Just to give you an example how it works. For the SenseBox, you start with a regular microcontroller. They're pretty cheap, pretty easy to use now. You have different sensors for the regular environmental phenomena, but you can also extend it like with water temperature, with pH values, and then for the SenseBox, you have these bees, which are our data connection models. So if you want to send Wi-Fi, there's a model for it. For LoRa, for saving an SD card, for sending data through the Ethernet. So if you have a wired connection available, so you can build up your setup depending on your location, because you have different locations, you have different infrastructure, and then if you want, there's also a graphical or visual programming interface, so we also use it for teaching to kids, so that they build their own sensor station in schools. They also program it themselves. But if you also want to just there's a plug-and-play version where you just can hook up everything together. You get a full script to upload the data, and also some kind of casing, which you can see on the right if you don't want to care about it. Just one project which was run last year through this platform was called 321 heiß, so it means 321 hot, which was done in a canton in Switzerland, and they were just interested in measuring temperature and humidity to find out in the canton some heat islands effect. So there was a small device which was 3D printed with an active air ventilation, and they were just capturing the location and the temperature and humidity value on a SD card and uploading it later. And they were interacting also with different peer groups, like with a lot of elderly people because they have time. It's often like that they are engaging in citizen science project, but also with schools, with local groups they found. And they had around about 100 devices floating around into the city, like the people were using them in their regular work or doing their regular stuff they were doing in the city. And they were trying to find out temperature, heat islands inside the city, find out cooling effects of different surfaces and so on. And this project is actively running, and they are using the SenseBox and the openSenseMap as their infrastructure. And of course, in citizen science project, a lot is about data quality and so on. So there's also studies on this, like comparison with professional sensor stations to get some kind of feeling how good is the data. And especially for temperature, it totally depends on airflow, because if you don't have an airflow, you are measuring some kind of temperature, but you are really measuring air temperature, which is correct. So the airflow is crucial in this case. So our motivation was like, okay, we want to create a platform for citizen science project to make it easier for them to handle data, to interact with the citizens so that they don't have to care about it. But the question was, on one hand, what is the motivation for users to take part? And there are a lot of different studies about motivations in contribution in citizen science project. So it's often like they are saying something like, I want to meet with like-minded people, I want to take part in a community exchange with others. You can find a lot of these studies and they somehow find all the same intrinsic motivation of the people to take part in this kind of project. And we also did a small study, which is, I think, now 5 years ago, on why are taking part in the openSenseMap, and kind of similar in comparison to other studies, but we have this kind of data aspect. I think you can't read it, but the people were explicitly saying, okay, I want to share my data as open data. I want to be able to use my data, other data. I want to allow other users to use the data I am collecting with my device, which is kind of nice. And now there's the big problem, especially in citizen science project, how to keep the users motivated. You often have this kind of lot of interacting with the users for 2 to 3 months, for 1 year, and then the users are getting like, I don't know, getting like bored, maybe the hardware has a failure, so how to keep the users motivated in volunteer geographic information projects or in citizen science project is a crucial part, because it's often like the users who are more than 1 year are actively contributing to your project, are crucial for running your project for a longer time. And one idea was, or the idea for Frederick was to connect 2 different systems, like the open badges, which is a standard for badges, which Mozilla created, I think, 10 or nearly 15 years ago. So it's not a real new standard. And I think you all know this kind of badges from different platforms, like your phone gives you a badge if you are walking for every day. You're getting badges in computer games. So all the gamification aspects are into the badges. But the problem with these badges is that you can't really share them with different platforms. So you are getting a badge, for example, in Strava for cycling every day for I don't know, 50 kilometers a day. Then you have a badge in Strava, but you can't display the badge on other platforms. So the idea of open badges is that it's a free standard which can be used, and you can share the badges through all your different platforms. So you could either get a badge in, like, taking part in the Phosphor-G now and display it on your LinkedIn profile, on your website, on whatever platform you want to display it. And that was the idea. So creating badges for the openSenseMap for taking part in different tasks, like short-term tasks, but also long-term tasks, like keeping your device alive for a longer period of time, and see, is it rewarding to sustain users' motivation. So the badges stuff is kind of a complex system. So it's not like just giving a badge to somebody. It's like a whole system about issuing, earning, managing badges, and the most important part is that you can verify the badges. So it's possible to get other badges and verify and see how did the user get this badge, how long is the user maybe interacting with the system to get this badge, what needs to be done to earn this badge, and the most important, badges can also expire. So if you think about badges in educational stuff, like maybe you get a badge for attending a class about soldering, you might need to re-earn this badge every 2 years, so that the badges expire. And the badge itself, it's kind of an image with metadata in it. So all you see on the left side is the data which is normally baked into the badge, and the baked is kind of the process of putting the metadata and the image together. And then you have the right side, so the recipient. So there is just one unique identifier. So your email address is a unique identifier for an open badge. And then there's different stuff like the badge was issued on a specific date, it was issued by a specific institution, by different persons, and also the URL to verify this badge later. And some kind of evidence is also possible, so that you can say which was needed to gain this badge. For our linking, we used My Badges. Plenty of different platforms to manage these kind of batching process, like baking badges, so they're easy to interchange. We just used My Badges because it's based on Badger, which was open source. I think it's not open source anymore, so they sadly changed it because it's also now getting a little bit more money into this whole badges process stuff. So we need to find out if there will be more systems like My Badges which are completely free. Because it will be some kind of crucial for it. There's the first prototype, so the badges are automatically asserted to a person. So if you register, for example, on the platform and then you uploaded 1 million measurements, like keeping your device, for example, alive for 2 years, the platform will automatically assert you the badge, depending on your user account and your email address, and then you can share it through different systems. So just a brief overview. So there's only one interaction between the both APIs. So you don't have to have a user account on both platforms. It could also be fine to just have a user account on the openSenseMap and not on My Badges, for example. And you could also then share the badges with each others. Frederick just did a short survey on active, I would say, hard users on the openSenseMap and asking them about with the prototype. So nearly everybody, over 50 to 75% said, okay, this would make such kind of platform interesting, would be making more engaging. And also they said, especially tasks which are some kind of underlying, like providing more metadata for your sensor station, which could also improve data quality, could just be made visible to users because there is a badge for it which you didn't earn so far. But of course there is a lot of future work, like finishing the prototype. We are doing a lot of rewriting now of the platform because we are getting on a point where there's too much data and we need to keep more track about our infrastructure. But it could also be some kind of idea to integrate open badges into other open source geo applications. Because all the systems are open, like the My Badges API, so there is on the one hand the possibility to assert a badge by hand. So I could just now say, okay, you all attended my talk, I will give you a badge for it. But it could also be just automatically, like doing specific tasks in the software, and then you get some kind of a badge later. Okay, and if you have any questions, of course you can also check out the GitHub repositories if you are more into like the technical stuff, or just read the full paper if you are more interested, or get in contact with me or Frederick afterwards.